in fate until the night steam rose between us in that hot tub, blurring the lines I'd spent years drawing around my heart. My name is Daniel, and this is the story of how one weekend in the mountains changed everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and second chances. It started with a text message I almost didn't answer. The notification lit up my phone screen as I sat in my cramped San Francisco apartment, surrounded by half-packed moving boxes and the remnants of a life I was trying to leave behind. 3 months had passed since Marcus and I broke up. 3 months since I'd caught him with someone else. 3 months since I'd sworn off dating. 3 months since I'd felt anything remotely close to hope. The text was from Casey, my best friend since college. Emergency intervention required. You, me, Tahoe cabin this weekend. Non-negotiable. Bringing reinforcements. I smiled despite myself. Casey had been trying to get me out of my apartment, out of my head for weeks now. But reinforcements? That was new. What kind of reinforcements? I typed back. The response came immediately, the kind with a psychology degree and a talent for making people laugh. Trust me. You need this. I should have said no. I had work deadlines, apartment showings, 1,000 excuses ready. But something in Casey's message, maybe the word trust, made me pause. When was the last time I'd trusted anything? Anyone? Fine, I replied. But I'm bringing my own wine. Wouldn't expect anything less. See you Friday at 6. And Daniel, bring your swim trunks. The hot tub is calling. I stared at that last message longer than I should have. A strange flutter of anxiety mixing with something I couldn't quite name. It had been so long since I'd felt comfortable in my own skin, let alone comfortable enough to be shirtless around strangers. Friday arrived faster than I expected. The drive to Lake Tahoe took 4 hours. Winding through California hills that gradually gave way to pine forests and mountain air so crisp it hurt to breathe. Casey's family cabin sat perched on a hillside overlooking the lake. A beautiful A-frame, structure with floor-to-ceiling windows and a deck that seemed to float above the trees. I pulled into the driveway just as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Casey's car was already there, along with another vehicle I didn't recognize, a well-loved Subaru with a Colorado license plate and a rainbow quality sticker on the bumper. Before I could overthink it, the cabin door flew open and Casey bounded out, all energy and warmth. You actually came. I was 50-50 on whether you'd bail. I'd never bail, I protested. Even though we both knew I'd canceled plans at least a dozen times in recent months, Casey pulled me into a hug. It smelled like cedar wood and home. Come on, I want you to meet Ethan. My stomach did a small flip. Ethan. The reinforcement I mentioned. He's a friend from my graduate program, just moved to Sacramento for work. Don't worry, he doesn't bite? Well, not unless you ask nicely. Casey winked, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks despite the cool mountain air. This was a setup. Of course it was a setup. Casey, I told you I'm not ready to make a new friend. Casey interrupted, eyebrows raised innocently. Because that's all this is, Daniel. Just 3 people, a beautiful cabin, and no pressure whatsoever. Scout's honor. I wanted to argue, to get back in my car and drive the 4 hours home. But then the cabin door opened again, and Ethan stepped out onto the deck. The first thing I noticed was his smile, warm and genuine, reaching all the way to eyes the color of honey in sunlight. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark curly hair that looked perpetually windswept, and the kind of casual confidence I'd spent my whole life envying. He wore a simple gray Henley and jeans, but somehow made it look effortless. You must be Daniel, he said, and his voice was like smooth whiskey, with the faintest trace of a southern accent. I've heard a lot about you. All lies, I managed, shaking his extended hand. His grip was firm, his palm warm against mine, and I pulled away faster than was probably polite. Well, come on in before you freeze, Casey said, grabbing my overnight bag. I've got chili on the stove and cornbread in the oven. We're doing this weekend, right? The cabin's interior was exactly as I remembered from the one time I'd visited years ago, exposed wooden beams. A stone fireplace crackling with fresh logs, and those massive windows framing the lake like a living painting. The space smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke. "This place is incredible," Ethan said, gazing out at the view. "I can see why you've been bragging about it, Casey. Family legacy," Casey said with mock solemnity. "My grandparents built it in the 70s. It's seen generations of Carson family drama, therapy sessions, and questionable life choices." "Which category does this weekend fall into?" I asked. "Hopefully, the therapeutic kind," Casey replied. Giving me a meaningful look before disappearing into the kitchen, Ethan and I stood in awkward silence for a moment.
Oh.
The only sound, the crackling fire. He seemed comfortable with the quiet, but I felt compelled to fill it. "So you're a psychologist?" I ventured. "Clinical therapist, actually. I work with teenagers mostly. Just started at a new practice in Sacramento." He turned to me and his smile softened. "And before you get weird about it, I promise I'm not psychoanalyzing you. I'm off the clock." I laughed, despite myself. "Casey told you I'd be weird about it?" "Casey told me you're going through a hard time and could use some company that isn't your own thoughts." His directness surprised me, but somehow it didn't feel invasive. For what it's worth, I get it. I went through a brutal breakup about a year ago. I thought I'd never feel normal again. "And now?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Now I'm standing in a beautiful cabin with new people, and I feel more like myself than I have in months." He paused, his gaze steady on mine. "It gets better, Daniel. I promise it does." There was something in his eyes, understanding without pity, warmth without expectation that made my chest tighten. I wasn't ready for whatever this was. But maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to be ready. Maybe I just needed to show up. "Dinner's ready," Casey called from the kitchen, breaking the moment. We gathered around the rustic dining table. Casey served up steaming bowls of chili with a flourish. The food was perfect, hearty and warming, exactly what the mountain chill demanded. Conversation flowed easier than I expected. Helped along by the bottle of red wine I'd brought and Casey's gift for storytelling, Ethan fit seamlessly into our dynamic, adding thoughtful observations and making Casey laugh with dry humor that caught me off guard. He asked about my work. I was a graphic designer for a tech startup, and actually seemed interested in my answers. He talked about his passion for hiking and his terrible attempts at learning guitar. He was real in a way I hadn't encountered in a long time. As the evening wore on and the wine bottle emptied, Casey stretched dramatically. "All right, gentlemen. I propose we take this party to the hot tub. The stars should be incredible tonight." My pulse quickened. "It's like 40 degrees out there, which is exactly why the hot tub will feel amazing," Casey countered. "Come on, Daniel. When was the last time you did something spontaneous?" I wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at me to stay inside, stay safe, keep my walls firmly in place. But Ethan was already standing, that easy smile on his face, and something about his presence made me want to be braver than I felt. "Fine," I heard myself say. "But I'm blaming you both if I catch pneumonia." 20 minutes later, I found myself standing on the deck in my swim trunks. Watching steam rise from the hot tub, like ghosts dancing in the moonlight. The cold air bit at my skin, making me hyper-aware of my body, the softness I'd never quite accepted. The vulnerability of being this exposed. Casey was already in the water, sighing contentedly. "God, this is perfect. Come on, you two, before you turn into popsicles." Ethan moved beside me, and I couldn't help but notice the lean strength of his frame. The tattoo that curved along his ribcage, words I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. He caught me looking and smiled, but didn't say anything as he climbed into the tub. I took a breath and followed. The water was blissfully hot, immediately chasing away the chill. I sank down until it reached my shoulders, finding a spot across from Casey with Ethan to my left. The jets hummed to life, sending bubbles swirling around us above. The sky was a carpet of stars, more than I'd ever seen in the city. The Milky Way stretched across the darkness like spilled sugar. "This," Casey said, quietly, "is exactly what we all needed." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, letting the heat seep into our muscles. I felt myself beginning to relax, the knots in my shoulders loosening. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan's voice was soft, meant only for me, even though Casey could hear. "What's the real reason you almost didn't come this weekend?" Should have made a joke or changed the subject. But something about the darkness, the stars, the heat lowered my defenses. I've been hiding, I admitted. After Marcus, after everything fell apart, I just wanted to disappear. Going through the motions at work, avoiding friends, avoiding life. This weekend felt like too much reality too soon. And now that you're here? Ethan asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. In the soft light from the cabin windows, his features were gentle, open. There was no judgment in his expression, only curiosity and something that might have been understanding. Now I'm terrified, I said honestly. But also, maybe a little glad I came. Smile could have melted the snow on the surrounding mountains. That's a start. Casey, bless them, had fallen suspiciously quiet, giving us space even while sharing the same small tub. The jets continued their soothing rhythm, and steam continued to rise, creating a cocoon that felt separate from the world. Casey mentioned you're moving, Ethan asked. Yeah, new apartment. Fresh start. Trying to leave the memories behind. I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. Turns out you can't really run from yourself, though, Ethan agreed. But you can stop running and face yourself with compassion instead of criticism. That's what I had to learn. Your breakup? He nodded. I spent months blaming myself, replaying every conversation, every moment, wondering what I could have done differently. My therapist, yes. Therapists need therapists to finally ask me what I would tell a client in my situation. And I realized I'd tell them to be kind to themselves, to recognize that relationships end for complex reasons, and that ending doesn't negate what was good about them or about you. His words settled over me like a blanket, warm and unexpected. I'd been carrying so much blame, so much shame, wearing my failed relationship like proof of my unworthiness. That's easier said than done, I murmured. The best things usually are. Ethan shifted slightly, and his knee brushed against mine under the water. Neither of us moved away. The touch was electric, sending awareness flooding through me. It had been so long since I'd felt attraction, since I'd allowed myself to feel anything but numb resignation. And now, here was this mankind and attractive and dangerously easy to talk to, awakening feelings I wasn't ready for. But maybe readiness was overrated. Maybe sometimes you just had to feel. The night deepened around us as we stayed in the hot tub, the cold air and hot water creating a perfect balance that made it easy to lose track of time. Casey eventually excused themselves. I need to make a work call, they said. Though their knowing smiles suggested otherwise leaving, Ethan and me alone in the steaming water under the infinite stars, the silence that followed. Casey's departure wasn't uncomfortable, but it hummed with possibility. Ethan leaned his head back against the tub's edge, exposing the long line of his throat, his eyes closed. In the dim light, water droplets clung to his collarbones like diamonds. This is nice, he said finally. Just being. No performance, no expectations. Is that what your life usually feels like? I asked. Performance? He opened his eyes and turned to look at me. Doesn't yours? The question hit deeper than I expected. I thought about the carefully curated version of myself I presented at work. The cheerful mask I wore when talking to my parents. The way I'd edited myself down in my relationship with Marcus. Always trying to be less needy, less emotional. Less much, yeah, I admitted. I guess it does. That's exhausting, isn't it? Ethan's voice was gentle. Always monitoring yourself, wondering if you're too much or not enough. You're really off the clock, I teased, trying to lighten the moment even as his words resonated in my chest. He laughed. A rich sound that seemed to vibrate through the water. Sorry, occupational hazard. I can talk about literally anything else. Did you know there are over 7,000 varieties of apples in the world? That's your pivot? Apple facts. I panicked. He was grinning now, completely unselfconscious. I'm actually terrible at small talk. Give me deep existential conversations or random trivia. The middle ground is a mystery to me. I found myself laughing too, real laughter that felt rusty from disuse. Okay, deep existential question then. Why did you agree to this weekend? Casey must have told you that you'd be meeting their recently heartbroken, emotionally unavailable friend. They did, Ethan confirmed. Almost those exact words, actually. And you still came. He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns in the water. About 8 months ago, a friend dragged me to a poetry reading when I was still deep in my post-breakup depression. I didn't want to go. I had a million excuses. But he insisted, and I went. And something about being in a room full of strangers sharing their vulnerabilities. It reminded me that I was still alive. Still capable of feeling. He paused, meeting my eyes. I guess I wanted to pay that forward. In case he spoke about you with so much affection that I was curious about the person who inspired that kind of loyalty. My throat tightened. And am I living up to the hype? You're different than I expected, Ethan said slowly. Casey described you as outgoing, always the life of the party. But I see someone who's been hurt and is trying to figure out who they are in the aftermath. That's not a criticism, he added quickly. It's just real. I appreciate real. I didn't know what to say to that. The vulnerability between us felt like a living thing, fragile and precious. The steam rose around us, making the moment feel suspended in time, separate from the ordinary world. Can I tell you something I haven't told anyone? The words left my mouth before I could stop them, of course. I'm not sure I knew who I was even before the breakup. I think I've spent my whole life being who other people needed me to be. The good son, the reliable friend, the easy boyfriend. And now that I'm alone, I feel like I struggled for the words. Like I'm just an outline with no color inside. Ethan's expression was impossibly tender. Do you want to know what I see when I look at you? I wasn't sure I did, but I nodded anyway. I see someone who's brave enough to admit they're lost. Someone who drove for hours to show up for a friendship even when it scared them. Someone who's sitting in a hot tub being vulnerable with a stranger, which might be the bravest thing of all. He shifted closer, and I could feel the heat of his body through the water. You have more color than you think, Daniel. Maybe you've just been looking in the wrong light. The air between us felt charged, electric. I was acutely aware of every point where the water connected us, carrying warmth and sensation. His knee was still against mine. If I moved my hand just slightly, I could touch his arm. I shouldn't want this. It was too soon, too fast, too risky. But sitting there under the stars with this man who saw me, really saw me, felt something crack open inside my chest. Not breaking, but blooming. Ethan, I started, not knowing how to finish. He waited, patient and present. I'm terrified, I confessed, of getting hurt again, of being too much or not enough, I gestured helplessly between us. Whatever this is. This doesn't have to be anything, Ethan said softly. It can just be two people in a hot tub having a conversation. No pressure, no expectations. We can let it be exactly what it is in this moment, and nothing more. But even as he said it, his hand moved through the water and found mine, lacing our fingers together. The touch was gentle, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't pull away. What if I want it to be more than a conversation? The question came out barely above a whisper. His thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm despite the hot water. Then, we take it slow. One moment at a time. No rushing, no assumptions. Just seeing what happens. I'm not good at slow, I admitted. I tend to fall fast and hard. And you're trying to protect yourself from that, Ethan finished. I understand. What if we make a deal? This weekend, we're just here. Present. Not worrying about what comes next. Not defining anything. When Monday comes, we figure out what, if anything, this means. Deal? It was the exact permission I needed to feel without consequence, to explore without commitment. Deal. His smile was like sunrise. Good. Now, tell me something real about you. Not the outline version. The color. I thought about it, really thought. What was true about me, underneath all the layers I'd built up? I love thunderstorms, I said finally. Not just like them love them. When I was a kid, I used to sit on our porch during storms and feel like the whole universe was putting on a show just for me. The power, the drama, the way everything gets washed clean afterward. As an adult, I still open my windows during storms, even though it drives my neighbors crazy. Ethan's eyes lit up. That's beautiful. What else? I cry at commercials, especially the ones with dogs or soldiers coming home. It's embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It means you're open to joy. I sing in my car, badly, full concerts with air guitar and everything. Favorite artist? Changes constantly. This week it's Hozier. Last month it was Janelle Monáe. Both excellent choices. Ethan's hand squeezed mine gently. See? Color everywhere. We talked for another hour, maybe more. Time lost meaning in that space between cold air and hot water, between strangers and something more. Ethan told me about growing up in Georgia, his coming out to his Southern Baptist parents, and the complicated journey toward reconciliation that was still ongoing. He talked about his work, how teenagers had a way of cutting through all the bullshit and getting to what mattered. He shared his love of hiking, his terrible cooking skills, the way he still called his grandmother every Sunday. I found myself sharing things. I'd kept locked away my complicated relationship with my body, my fear of being forgettable, the way I sometimes felt like an imposter in my own life. Ethan listened to all of it without judgment, asking questions that showed he was truly hearing me, not just waiting for his turn to talk. At some point, we'd moved even closer. Our knees were fully touching now, his arms stretched along the edge of the tub behind me. If I leaned back slightly, I'd be tucked against his side. I leaned back. His arm came around my shoulders naturally. It's like we'd done this 1,000 times. I could feel his heartbeat against my back, steady and strong. This is nice, I murmured. Yeah, he agreed. It really is. Above us, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Make a wish, Ethan said. I closed my eyes. What did I wish for? For this feeling to last? For the courage to let myself want again? For Monday to never come, so we could stay suspended in this perfect moment. In the end, I wished for the simplest thing, for whatever happened next to unfold exactly as it should. When I opened my eyes, Ethan was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, tender and intense all at once. What did you wish for? He asked. Can't tell you. Won't come true? Superstitious? Maybe. Or maybe I'm learning to hold some things close to my heart without sharing them immediately. He smiled. Growth. The cold was starting to seep in around the edges despite the hot water, and I realized we'd been out here for hours. Reluctantly, I started to pull away. We should probably head inside, I said. Before we turn into prunes. Probably Ethan agreed, but neither of us moved. Finally, I forced myself to stand, the cold air hitting my wet skin like a shock. Ethan followed, and we grabbed the towels Casey had left on the deck chairs. Wrapped in terry cloth, we made our way back to the cabin. Inside, Casey was curled up on the couch with a book, looking completely unsurprised by our return. Thought you two might have dissolved into the water. Good talk. The best, Ethan said, and the warmth in his voice made me blush. Well, I've claimed the master bedroom, Casey announced. You two can fight over the other 2 rooms. Or not fight. Your choice. They winked before heading upstairs, leaving Ethan and me standing in the living room. I should shower, I said. Wash off the chlorine. Me too. Ethan hesitated. Daniel? Yeah. Thank you. For tonight, for trusting me with your stories, thank you for listening. We stood there for a long moment, neither wanting to be the first to walk away. Finally, Ethan reached out and tucked a damp strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. Sleep well, he said softly. You too. Ow. I watched him climb the stairs to his room before heading to mine. The bedroom was cozy, with a queen bed covered in a thick quilt and a window overlooking the forest. I showered quickly, letting the hot water rinse away the chlorine and the lingering chill. When I climbed into bed, I expected my mind to race, analyzing every word, every touch, every moment from the evening. Instead, I felt calm, present, like something inside me had settled. I fell asleep, with the memory of Ethan's hand in mine and the taste of possibility on my lips. woke to golden sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back: the hot tub, the stars, Ethan's hand in mine. Ethan, I grabbed my phone. 9:47 a.m. Late for me. I'd slept deeply, dreamlessly, better than I had in months. Pulling on jeans and a sweatshirt, I made my way downstairs. The living room was empty, but voices drifted in from the deck. Through the windows, I could see Casey and Ethan sitting at the outdoor table, coffee mugs steaming in the morning cold. I poured myself a cup and joined them outside. The view in daylight was breathtaking, the lake a perfect mirror of blue, mountains rising in the distance, pine trees standing sentinel. "Morning, Sleeping Beauty," Casey said cheerfully. "We were taking bets on when you'd surface." "Morning," settled into the chair next to Ethan, who looked unfairly good in the morning light, his curls still damp from a shower. "What time did you two get up?" "Casey dragged me out for a sunrise hike at 6, Ethan said, mock-accusingly. "Apparently, that's a thing they do. It builds character," Casey defended. "Plus, the views were incredible. You should see what you missed. I'll take your word for it." I wrapped my hands around my mug, savoring the warmth. "Plans for today?" "Actually," Casey said, standing up with theatrical casualness, "I just remembered I have a conference call at 10. Could last a few hours. You two should explore the area. There's a trail that leads down to the lake about a mile. Easy walk. Gorgeous this time of year." I narrowed my eyes at my best friend. Convenient conference call. I'm in demand. What can I say? Casey grinned, completely unrepentant. "Seriously? Go enjoy the day. I'll have lunch ready when you get back." 20 minutes later, Ethan and I were bundled in jackets, walking the path that wound down through the forest. The morning air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and earth. Our breath came out in small clouds. We walked in comfortable silence at first. I found myself studying Ethan in the daylight. The way he moved with an easy grace, how he'd occasionally stop to examine a particularly interesting tree or rock formation. The small smile that seemed to live permanently at the corner of his mouth. "You're staring," he said, without looking at me. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "Sorry, I was just thinking. About last night, this, how surreal it all feels." He stopped walking and turned to face me. "Good surreal or bad surreal?" "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "Both, maybe?" We'd reached a clearing where the trees opened up to reveal the lake below, its surface glittering in the morning sun. Ethan led us to a fallen log that made a natural bench. "Talk to me," he said as we sat. "What's going on in that head of yours?" I watched the lake, gathering my thoughts. I woke up feeling happy. Actually happy, not just okay or not sad. And that scared me because I've learned that happiness is temporary, and the higher you get. The harder you fall? That's a lonely way to live, Ethan observed gently. It's a safe way to live. Safe and lonely aren't mutually exclusive, Daniel. He shifted to face me more fully. What if happiness doesn't have to be about height and falling? What if it's just about being present in the good moments when they come, without catastrophizing about when they'll end? You make it sound simple, make it sound like a practice. Because that's what it is, something you have to choose over and over again. He paused. Want to know what I was thinking about this morning? Always. I was thinking about how I came on this trip expecting to maybe make a new friend, help Casey help you, and have a relaxing weekend. Instead, I met someone who makes me want to be braver, who reminds me why vulnerability is worth the risk. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Ethan, I'm not asking you for anything, he continued. I meant what I said about taking this one moment at a time. But I also think we owe it to ourselves to be honest about what we're feeling. And I'm feeling something. Something I didn't expect and definitely wasn't looking for. The words I'd been holding back since last night pushed at my throat, demanding release. I'm feeling it too. And it terrifies me because I'm not supposed to be ready for this. I'm supposed to still be healing, still be broken. Who says you can't heal and feel at the same time? Ethan reached for my hand and I let him take it. Who says you have to be completely whole before you're allowed to connect with someone? Every self-help article I've read in the past 3 months. He laughed. Okay, fair. But here's the thing about those articles. They're written for the masses, not for you specifically. Your healing doesn't have to look like anyone else's. I turned his words over in my mind, testing them against my fears. What if I mess this up? What if you don't? What if I'm not ready? What if ready is a myth and we're all just doing our best? I couldn't help but smile. You have an answer for everything, don't you? Occupational hazard, he said again, but his eyes were soft. Daniel, I can't promise this will work out. I can't promise I won't hurt you or you won't hurt me. But I can promise that whatever this is, I'm here for it fully. Present, honest, no games. The last of my resistance crumbled. I'd spent so long trying to protect myself, building walls and keeping people at a distance. But sitting there on a log in a forest clearing with Ethan's hand in mine, I realized that protection wasn't the same as living. Okay, I said. Okay, let's see where this goes. One moment at a time. Starting with this one. His smile could have powered the sun. What does this moment call for? I thought about it, really thought. What did I want right here, right now, without worrying about tomorrow? This moment calls for honesty, I said. I like you, Ethan, a lot. More than is probably rational given we just met. And I want to see what happens when I stop running from that. I like you too, he said. The way you think deeply about things. How you're trying so hard to be brave even when you're scared. The vulnerability you showed me last night. All of it. We sat there, hands intertwined, the lake spreading out before us like possibility made liquid. A bird called from somewhere in the trees, and the wind whispered through the pines. Can I kiss you? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My breath caught. Yes, you can. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to change my mind. But I didn't want to change my mind. I wanted him with a clarity that cut through all my doubts. When his lips met mine, it felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure all at once. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question being asked and answered, then deeper, more certain, as we both leaned into it. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. I felt tears prick at my eyes, not sad tears, but the kind that came from feeling too much, from the overwhelming relief of letting yourself want something and having it want you back. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing a little harder, Ethan rested his forehead against mine. That was... He started. Yeah, I agreed. We sat like that for a long moment. Foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Eventually, we pulled apart, but stayed close. His arm around my shoulders and mine around his waist. We should probably head back, I said eventually. Casey will think we got lost. They'll know exactly what happened and be insufferably smug about it. That's more likely. We made our way back up the trail. But this time, we walked pressed close together, stopping occasionally to kiss like teenagers, laughing at ourselves and not caring. The world felt brighter, colors more vivid, like I'd been living in black and white and suddenly someone had switched on the saturation. Casey was indeed waiting when we returned. And their knowing smile said everything. Good walk, they asked innocently. The best, I said, unable to keep the grin off my face. I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you. Ethan laughed. You're not even a little shocked. Fine, I'm not. But I am delighted. Lunch is ready, by the way. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup because I'm a comfort food genius. We ate on the deck, bundled in blankets, trading stories and jokes. Casey regaled us with tales from their conference call, apparently. Someone's cat had knocked over an entire bookshelf in the background. And we laughed until our sides hurt. After lunch, Ethan suggested a drive around the lake, so we piled into his Subaru and wound along mountain roads. Stopping at overlooks and quirky small-town shops, I bought a ridiculous snow globe featuring a bear and a hot tub, which made Ethan laugh so hard he had to lean against a wall. It's perfect, he said, wiping his eyes. You have to get it. It's the tackiest thing I've ever seen. Exactly. I bought it. along with a bag of homemade fudge to share. We ate it while sitting on a bench overlooking the lake, watching boats cut through the water below. I don't want this weekend to end, I admitted. It doesn't have to, Ethan said. I mean, we can't stay here forever, but Sacramento and San Francisco aren't that far apart. An hour's drive. We could do weekends, dinners, phone calls. If you want to, I want to. The certainty in my voice surprised even me. I really want to. Then we continued 1018 Amwil. He kissed my temple. No pressure, no rushing, just continuing to see where this goes. That evening, we returned to the hot tub, all three of us this time. Casey told embarrassing stories from our college days while Ethan listened with rapt attention, occasionally throwing in questions that made the stories even better. Remember when you decided to dye your hair purple? Casey asked me. Oh God. It turned out orange. Bright traffic, cone orange. And you had a job interview the next day. Got the job, though. I protested. You did, Casey agreed. The interviewer said your hair showed creativity and bold decision-making. Little did they know it showed a drunk college student in a box of dye from CVS. Ethan was laughing so hard he had tears running down his face. Please tell me there are pictures. So many pictures, Casey confirmed. Traitor, I said. But I was laughing too, as the night deepened. Casey once again excused themselves. I'm tired from that hike. You two leaving Ethan and me alone in the water under the stars. Come here, Ethan said. And I moved into his arms, my back against his chest. He wrapped his arms around me, and we sat like that, watching the sky. Thank you, I said quietly. For what? For seeing me. For being patient with my fears. For showing me that maybe I'm ready for this after all. His arms tightened around me. Thank you for being brave enough to let me in. I know that wasn't easy. It still isn't, I admitted. But it's getting easier. We stayed out there until the cold became too much, then headed inside, showered, and met in my room without discussing it. We lay in bed together, fully clothed, his arms around me and my head on his chest. Is this okay? He asked. It's perfect. We talked until we couldn't keep our eyes open, sharing dreams and fears and stupid jokes. When I finally drifted off, it was to the rhythm of his heartbeat, and the feeling of complete safety Sunday morning arrived too quickly. We had to be out of the cabin by noon, back to real life, responsibilities, and the question of what came next. But as we packed and cleaned, the anxiety I expected never came. Instead, I felt calm, certain. This wasn't ending, it was just beginning in a different form. Before we left, the three of us stood on the deck one last time, looking out at the view that had witnessed so much transformation in just 2 days. Thank you, Casey, I said, pulling my best friend into a hug, for knowing what I needed even when I didn't. That's what I'm here for, Casey said. Plus, I look great as a matchmaker. It's my new calling. Don't quit your day job, Ethan teased. The drive home felt different than the drive up. Ethan and I had made plans: dinner on Tuesday, a hike next weekend, a concert in a month. Small things, building blocks for something bigger. When he dropped me at my apartment, he kissed me goodbye with a promise to call later. This weekend was... I struggled for words. I know, he said. For me too. I watched him drive away, then climbed the stairs to my apartment. The moving boxes were still there, but they didn't look sad anymore. They looked like potential. It's like the beginning of something rather than the end. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Missing you already. Is that too much? I smiled and typed back. Not too much. Just right. Another message came through, this one from Casey. So, I'm taking credit for this relationship, right? Absolutely not, I replied. But then I added, okay, maybe a little. I spent the rest of Sunday unpacking, but with music playing and a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in months. When I came across a photo of Marcus and me, I looked at it for a long moment, then placed it in a memory box. Not throwing it away, that relationship had been real and had taught me things, but not keeping it on display either. I was allowed to move forward. I was allowed to want again. That night, Ethan and I video called for 2 hours, just talking and laughing and making plans. when we finally hung up, I realized I'd gone the entire day without questioning whether I deserved this happiness, without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe happiness didn't have to be about heights and falls. Maybe it could just be about being present in the good moments when they came. I pulled out the tacky snow globe I'd bought and set it on my bookshelf where I could see it every day. A reminder of a weekend that changed everything. Of a hot tub where I didn't expect anything, but found everything. Of the moment I decided to stop running and start living. My phone buzzed one more time. Sweet dreams, Daniel. Thank you for taking a chance on this, I typed back. Thank you for being worth the chance. As I settled into bed, I realized something profound. I was excited about tomorrow. Not anxious, not dreading it, but genuinely excited to see what came next. That was growth. That was healing. That was the beginning of something beautiful.